imagine if we were trying to set blood alcohol limits and our objective was to disappoint doctors and to disappoint the alcohol industry by kind of splitting the middle.
Yeah.
You know, the health experts think one thing, the people that sell alcohol think another thing. Look at me in the sensible centre. When I put it like that, everyone's like, oh, well, that's a bit silly. But actually, that's what professional politicians are doing to us all the time.
One for mum, one for dad, and one for the country.
And there has never been a more exciting time to be an Australian.
Budgets are about choices, Fran, and you show what you value through the choices you make.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. The Treasurer knows.
I want an economy that works for people, not the other way around.
We'll just end up being a third-rate economy, a banana republic.
Just follow the money.
G'day and welcome to Follow the Money, the Australia Institute's podcast that explains economics, politics and policy in plain English. I'm Ebony Bennett, Deputy Director at the Australia Institute. And Australian politics is really governed by an assumption that on any given issue, the sensible path is towards the centre ground. Too far left or right, and you're taking an extreme position. But it's just not true. On climate, gambling, corruption, the evidence doesn't point to some so-called sensible centre. To prevent harm, governments just need to act decisively. And anything short of that isn't just a benign attempt to uphold the status quo, it can actively do us damage. The rush to the middle and how we can resist it is the subject of the second edition of our Vantage Point essay series. Dead Centre, How Political Pragmatism is Killing Us by Richard Dennis is out this week and he's with me on the show today. G'day, Richard.
Hey, Eb.
Richard, you've been around Australian politics for a little while now. Why do you think Australians are so obsessed with the so-called sensible centre?
Oh, who wouldn't want to be in the sensible centre with everybody agreeing how wise you were and how pragmatic you were? And our politics has tried to make conflict go away. And that's really dangerous because we actually need well-functioning disagreement in democracy. We didn't ask the whaling industry whether they were okay with ending whaling.
Yeah.
We didn't ask the asbestos industry how would they feel if we put people's safety ahead of their profits. Like, we know sometimes we have to make hard decisions that'll make people sad, but in Australia, in recent decades, I think in the last 20 years or so, the kind of power of corporations, the timidity of elected governments, and I think the willingness of the media to write both sides of any story, those three things have all combined to make our debates always start from the premise that there's a bit of truth on all sides.
Yeah.
No one gets everything they want, which is okay for some issues, but for issues like catastrophic climate change, protecting people from deadly substances, or stopping Indigenous people dying in custody, there's no both-siding about it. We actually just need to act sometimes. We need to change sometimes. And, we've lost the will to do that.
Together, we can end the climate wars.
To some breaking news for you now. The life of Australia's largest oil and gas project will be extended to 2070.
The changes to the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act remove the ability to revoke approvals in certain circumstances.
Just as these laws look set to do the thing that they're meant to do and protect World Heritage and protect the skate, they're going to change the law.
That will be one of the most egregious acts of environmental vandalism this Parliament has ever been responsible for.
And then to have the Minister try and spin this government's record when they've approved 32 now new coal and gas mines.
If you're giving away your natural resources, you're not getting any return, let alone a fair return. As an economist, that makes absolutely no sense.
And just set it up for me in political terms. How does this normally play out when there's some kind of contentious issue in the Parliament? Where do we get stuck in this debate, or how do governments play it so that they end up in the sensible centre?
Yeah, so a big part of this mess is that very clever professional politicians who've been there for decades and know exactly what they're doing are framing up debates in ways that make them look good and make people pushing for more change look silly. So climate's a classic example. Whether it's the current Labor government or previous Conservative governments, whatever they're doing is the sensible thing.
Yeah.
And they define their sensibleness by, and look, environmentalists want me to go further. It's like, well, that's not proof that you're getting it right. But they'd say, but some polluter doesn't want me to go as far as I've gone. Okay, still not proof that you're getting it right. So I'll come back to the politics in a sec, but imagine if we were trying to set blood alcohol limits and our objective was to disappoint doctors and to disappoint the alcohol industry by kind of splitting the middle.
Yeah.
And say, I'm in the centre. The health experts think one thing, the people that sell alcohol think another thing. Look at me in the sensible centre. Now, when I put it like that, everyone's like, that's a bit silly. But actually, that's what professional politicians are doing to us all the time. I want to reduce emissions by 30%. Well, how'd you come up with that number? Well, the Greens want 40 and the Liberals want 20, so I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, you're in the middle, but that doesn't mean you're doing enough to make people safe. It doesn't mean you're doing enough to solve the actual substantive problem. What we're actually focused on in Australia is the political problem.
Yeah.
Who cares that the science says I need to go further? If I go further, I'll look extreme. I'm not here to solve problems. I'm here to keep reminding the media that I'm in the sensible centre. So, yeah, we've really, our political class, our media class, and of course the corporate lobbyists have kind of combined to make acting decisively based either on evidence or on public opinion. That's extreme.
Yeah.
Right? It's extreme to, in a democracy, do what most people want, apparently. It's extreme in a democracy to do what the evidence says would work. What's sensible is to kind of, divvy up the spoils and make sure everyone gets a little slice of the cake.
Or that everyone's just a little bit disappointed.
Or if everyone's a bit disappointed, it's proof of my cake cutting.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, mate, you've had enough cake.
Yeah.
You don't need any more cake. You should thank me for the last 20 years of cake. No more cake for you. In Australia, we've convinced ourselves that democracy shouldn't do that.
And how much does this pursuit of centrism have to do with evidence-based policy, for example?
Great question, Eb. Look, I think a lot of Australians, probably a lot of people listening to this podcast, certainly a lot of people in academia and the public service, if you ask them about their positions on policy, they're quick to say, I like evidence-based policy. I want policy to be evidence-based. Now, that's okay. I think, evidence is a good basis for making a whole bunch of policies, especially, blood alcohol limits or, banning dangerous stone bench tops or banning asbestos. Evidence-based policy can lead to good, positive change, just to be clear. But we don't always use evidence. There wasn't an evidence-based argument for giving women the vote. There wasn't an evidence-based approach to ending apartheid in South Africa. It's okay to change things because it's right. So evidence-based policy sounds like a good idea. As a think tank, we put evidence out there all the time. We're always making an evidence-based case for things. But I think people don't like to admit there's a real tension between evidence-based policy, look, the data says this policy is the right idea, and this idea of centrism that I don't want to upset anyone too much.
Yeah.
I want to be in between where Labor is and the coalition is, or in between where the environmentalists are and the fossil fuel industry is. So the idea that you want to locate yourself in between groups, compromising all the time, is the opposite of saying, I want to look at the evidence and decide where we should be. So I think in Australia, a lot of people would say, I like evidence-based policy. I'm a bit of a centrist. But I'm arguing in this essay, no, evidence-based policy is often in stark contrast to centrism because the evidence is often quite radical.
Yeah, and you were talking about kind of, when we choose to care about evidence-based policy and when we don't. And I just want to bring you back because it really stuck out to me, having, been through so many of the climate wars over the years. How the Labor government acted when it came to engineered stone versus, for example, government's approach to climate change in the past. And I just thought the way that you described that difference was really effective. Can you take us through that example?
Look, so the first term Labor government did a lot of good things, and there's no doubt that, changing the government led to significant policy changes in some domains. And an important one was these composite stone bench tops, the sort of fake stone that people like to have, or property developers like to put in people's kitchens. And it turns out that drilling holes and cutting out the hole for the sink in those things is a really dangerous thing to do. The powder that comes off when inhaled by the workers is actually deadly. And the people who make stone bench tops wanted to keep making them. The property developers wanted to keep installing them because apparently some people like the look of them. But a combination of good empirical evidence from the medical fraternity combined with the construction union saying, hey, this is killing our workers, that combination of some evidence and some political power led to the Labor government acting decisively and saying, you know what, those things that we're putting in our kitchens, they're killing workers. There are alternatives to them. We're gonna ban them. And good. That's good. And, the people that sell them were very sad. But I didn't want to make them sad, but I don't want the dead workers. So the government knows how to look at evidence, look at politics, make a decision and own it. But when it comes to climate, that's naive.
Yeah.
When it comes to climate action, the fact that the evidence says we really need to stop building new coal and gas, the fact that the scientists say that, the public overwhelmingly say that, the international community say that, in Australia, well, that's just silly, Richard. That's naive.
Yeah, and we didn't set like a 2050 target for net zero stone bench tops.
Nope.
We just acted.
And we didn't have whale offsetting schemes and we didn't let the asbestos industry say, but if I spend more money on lung cancer wards, can I keep mining asbestos? So, yeah, you're spot on. When it came to stone bench tops, we acted decisively. When it came to whaling, when it came to the government wanting to introduce a ban on social media for kids under 16. Did that make industry sad? Yes. Did it make a lot of young people sad? Yes. Did the government believe it's the right thing to do? Yes. So they acted. So they know how to do it, sometimes. It's just that when it comes to climate change in particular, I'd argue there is just so much concentrated power and so much profit getting made from the fossil fuel industry, combined with sort of legacy scars and wounds of people who have tried to fight the fossil fuel industry before and lost. And, the problem with democracy is we do need bravery in our leaders, and the fact that they've had a fight and lost before shouldn't make them never want to have that fight again.
Yeah.
That might be sensible for them, but it's not how a country gets its problems solved.
Forging this new partnership, we're showing again how democracies can deliver.
This is the genius deal that our government has done.
Is it true that you kept it from most of your national security cabinet for almost a year?
It is true, other than the Defence Minister and the Foreign Minister.
What's remarkable about AUKUS is it was signed up without even a formal cabinet brief. It was signed up without any kind of serious scrutiny.
If it succeeded, and it's a heroic if, it would be the biggest transfer of Australian sovereign wealth in our history. And it was cooked up by a few blokes in suits and uniforms behind closed doors.
We sacrificed sovereignty, or the government sacrificed sovereignty to get security, and it actually looks like we're going to lose both.
I want to stick with this idea of how this influences politics for a little bit longer, because one of the ways that this, I think, really manifests is always in this push for that bipartisan policy kind of is the gold standard. And I think that's especially obvious when it comes to kind of defence and foreign affairs and kind of national security. You could talk a little bit about the way AUKUS became policy and what does that tell us about centrism and the way this operates in politics?
Yeah, so often people believe, that's fair enough, people can believe what they want, that bipartisanship is some sort of pinnacle of democratic achievement. And if you can get both major parties to agree on something, well, that must be great. Well, people can believe what they want, but I'd suggest that often bipartisanship is proof of democratic failure because it means we're not having the debate about big issues. And AUKUS is an extreme example of that. In the lead up to the 2022 election, you've got Scott Morrison saying, well, I'm going to spend $360 billion on nuclear submarines. And why did he do this? Well, maybe he really believed we needed nuclear submarines. Was he getting advised that by the Navy? No. Was he getting advised that by DFAT? No. But he'd come to that view. Fine. That was his view. And without getting it costed by Treasury, without DFAT providing input, indeed without a cabinet brief, we now know, the Morrison cabinet decided to make Australia's biggest ever defence purchase of AUKUS. And a lot of people, myself included, think that what he was really trying to do was wedge Labor in the lead up to the election. He was behind in the polls. One of the things that Conservative voters like is defence, and he wanted to say, look, I'm all in. I'm not only all in with the US, but I'm nuclear submarines all in. I dare you, Labor, to oppose that, and let's have an election with Morrison likes nuclear subs, Albo doesn't. Obviously, Scott Morrison thought that was in his interest or he wouldn't do it. But Albo was, and I'm doing scare quotes while I'm talking, too smart to fall for that and went, ha, I'll just agree with it. Now, we know that Labor had less than 24 hours to make this decision. It can't have been evidence-based.
Yeah.
The original decision wasn't advised by Navy. It wasn't advised by Foreign Affairs. Labor, then in opposition, wasn't advised by Navy, wasn't advised by Foreign Affairs. Labor makes the decision in less than 24 hours. We don't want to get wedged, so we're all in. So now we have bipartisan support for what I think is one of the craziest ideas we've ever made. But because bipartisan support means very little parliamentary scrutiny, indeed very little media scrutiny, because there's no fun contest to report.
Yeah.
If all the big kids think it's a good idea, then kind of what's the point? Now, luckily, from my point of view, it's such a bad idea. The Americans have had an inquiry into it. The English are having an inquiry into it. Former prime ministers like Malcolm Turnbull are out saying it's never going to happen. So despite the bipartisan consensus, there is some democratic debate about it. But yeah, for me, it really highlights that when the two major parties are in lockstep on something, whether it's AUKUS or gambling or fossil fuel subsidies, when we have these big issues that for political reasons neither major party wants to break on, historically it's been really hard to have a democratic conversation about it. But that's breaking down, which is good.
Before we get to the breakdown, I want to stick with the politics and go into a little bit more detail about how the sausage is made. In the essay, you kind of talk about bluff bills, what you call bluff bills, and I just wondered if you could explain for the listeners what you mean by that and what function they play in politics in Parliament.
Yeah, so I tell an anecdote in the essay, which, I don't name names, but I think it's a fun anecdote about a time when I was working in Parliament as an advisor and a Howard minister came to me with a draft piece of legislation. And, I won't repeat the whole anecdote here, but so you got to buy the essay to get all the gory details here. But why I refer to bluff bills is this minister knew that this draft bill, this draft legislation was never going to pass the Parliament. Indeed, he didn't want it to pass the Parliament in the form he'd written it, because in the late night meeting we were having a laugh with each other about, he was actually coming to me, his political opponent, saying, how about you amend my bill? Why don't you make yourself look clever? Like, I'll introduce this bill, it'll never get up. You can introduce some amendments, you'll look clever. We can have months-long argument about this issue.
So many headlines.
The Howard minister gets to make his base happy because he's trying to do something that they like, that the minister knows is a bit crazy. The party I was working for, the Australian Democrats at the time, they get to look sensible by saying, oh, that's a silly idea, but here's how you could improve it. And the reason I call them bluff bills is they're not designed to pass. They're not designed to solve an actual problem. And I think it's hard for people who haven't worked in Parliament House to believe and to be this cynical that sometimes governments are introducing legislation into the parliament, legislation that took months to draft, countless hours of consultation. And the point of the legislation is not to make a new law to fix a problem, but to show the government cares.
Yeah.
The point of the bill is symbolic. The point of the bill, to link it back to climate, is potentially for a government to say, well, I want to tackle climate change like this, but the Greens voted against it. They want me to go further. And the coalition voted against it. They don't want me to go so far. I'm here in the sensible centre. Look, I've even got a bill before Parliament. A bill, I tell you. I'm so serious. While the government's whispering to the fossil fuel industry, don't worry, it'll never pass.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just going through performance art here, wasting the Parliament's time, looking like I'm trying to solve a problem when actually I'm just trying to show through having fights with people that I'm the sensible one and everyone else is out to stop me.
And how do you think the recent federal election is going to change the dynamics, if at all, in Parliament with the government with such a thumping majority and its choices on whom it negotiates with to get things through the Parliament?
Yeah, look, it's too early to tell, but what we saw in the last Parliament was that with something like an Environmental Protection Act, Tanya Plibersek successfully negotiated one with Sarah Hanson-Young and the Greens. There was a deal.
Yeah.
And the Prime Minister stepped in and went, what are you doing, Tanya? You weren't supposed to actually do a deal. We were supposed to just have a fight. So even though the Labor Party and the Greens had agreed on how to create an Environmental Protection Act, the Prime Minister stepped in and said, no.
None of that, thanks.
We're not having that. We're not having that. Don't you get it? Or similarly, or not, well, maybe just as bad, the Labor government were committed to having a Federal Corruption Commission, and in order to get it through the Senate, they could have negotiated with the Greens, maybe make it stronger, but they chose to get it through with Liberal support. But the price of the Liberal support was we're not going to allow public hearings. So Labor had a choice. They were going to set up a Federal Corruption Commission. Do they strengthen it by negotiating with the Greens or weaken it by negotiating with the Liberals? It's their right to do so, chose to negotiate with the Liberals. But it's easy to say, it was the Liberals that watered down the Corruption Commission. No, it was Labor's determination to negotiate with them. But when it came to industrial relations reform, there's no way Labor, who were committed to industrial relations reform, were going to go and ask the Liberals for permission to do our reform.
Yeah.
So while in the previous Parliament, the Prime Minister was adamant that he didn't want to do deals with the Greens, when it came to industrial relations laws, no problem, quick. And the Greens want to strengthen the IR laws if they're going to pass. Okay, no problem. So I haven't answered your question yet. What's going to happen this term? Well, we'll see. But what I would say, and indeed a major reason why I wrote this essay, is I think that a re-elected Labor government with a very big majority in the lower house can pass any bill it wants through the lower house. But changing the country requires passing bills through both houses of Parliament, not announcing bills, not having big fights about bluff bills. Actually changing the country requires the passage of laws through both houses of Parliament. And I really hope that this government uses its big mandate in the lower house, combined with the fact that Labor and the Greens have a majority in the Senate, to pass what I hope are the kind of progressive reforms that we still remember Whitlam for, that we still talk about Hawke and Keating for. So there's an opportunity there for this government. They don't have much to fear in terms of, if we go too far, the Liberals might win the next election. Here's a hint. No, they won't. But whether this government uses the Senate as an excuse for not doing something or an opportunity to do really lasting transformative things, I think that's the real test for the Albanese government.
People were feeling ignored, neglected and taken for granted for way too long.
I want to start by arguing that the Teals are a giant green left con job.
These are dramatic changes in our politics happening before our eyes.
Look at what we have done. First go.
Labor may have held on in Bean, but at her first attempt, Jessie Price has brought the margin down to the closest ever for an ACT seat in the House of Representatives.
So if we look at those election results, and I want to kind of focus for a minute on two things. One is what happened to the Liberal Party and the other, or the coalition, and the other is the no such thing as a safe seat, which you talk about in the essay, and the rise of independents and minor parties. How much of voting trends is to do you think, with voter dissatisfaction with how politics has been done?
There's clearly a lot of voter dissatisfaction with the two major parties. We know that because their combined primary vote has been falling steadily for decades. And that trend continued at this election. It's just that Labor's vote went up a little bit while the Liberal vote fell a lot. So the combined Labor-Liberal vote, or the combined coalition Labor vote, has fallen steadily for decades. Now, the consequences of that are becoming a lot more apparent. The Liberals really discovered the consequences in 2022 when an unpopular Morrison government with an unpopular agenda lost 6 very safe Liberal seats to independents.
Not marginals.
Not marginals. Like their safest once blue ribbon seats were lost in 2022. And that happened after, in 2019, Zali Steggall had won the seat of Warringah, but defeating Tony Abbott. So in 2019, they had a shot across the bow and lost a very safe seat. In 2022, the torpedoes hit them right, amidship. Yet still in 2025, the Liberals went to the election with the kind of policies that had been repudiated 2 elections in a row in their safest seats. So it didn't surprise me at all that the Liberals lost votes. It surprised everyone, I think, how many. But the Liberals had ignored the warnings in 2019 and 2022. Labor have just won what looks like a landslide in terms of seats won. So, they've got a record haul of lower house seats, but without taking away the size of their victory, the landslide is thin. It's not a very deep layer of mud.
Yeah, it's quite shallow.
It's a very shallow landslide. It swept the Liberals away, but it hasn't left the Labor Party in a strong position. And obviously, I go into more detail on this in the essay, but, when Hawke won government, he won with around 50% of the primary vote. Well, Albo just won with the second lowest Labor primary vote ever, okay? And he only did slightly better than he did the election before. So really, while Labor's victory was remarkable, the number of seats won is remarkable, what Labor has done is win a record number of parliamentary seats off a near record low primary vote. And the Liberals ignored the warnings in 2019 and 2022. If Labor ignores the warnings in 2028, of what they just saw, what it means is they would be ignoring the fact that Fremantle used to be one of their safest seats. It's now held by less than 1%. Bean here in the ACT was once one of Labor's safest seats. It's now held by way less than 1%. So Labor won lots of seats, but it's not picking up a lot of voters. And just as the Liberals lost seats to independents, I think that Labor really risks losing seats to the Greens and independents in 2028 if they confuse the breadth of their victory with the depth of their victory.
I want to finish up by going back to the beginning of the essay where you kind of set it up by talking about how Australia is one of the wealthiest countries on the planet, yet our services and infrastructure fall well short of those enjoyed in other democracies. And take us back to, I guess, the crux of this essay and what that has to do with centrism. Why is centrism failing to deliver us the kinds of things that the public so clearly wants?
Well, centrism and the idea that the major parties have a veto on what's a sensible idea worth talking about is preventing Australia from having the big conversations about important things that I think a lot of Australians want to have, but also I think are essential to understand why Australia is slipping behind other countries. So, fact, Australia is one of the lowest tax countries in the world. This is revealed by top secret data hidden on the OECD and World Bank and IMF websites. It is entirely uncontroversial anywhere else in the world to call Australia a low tax country. But because neither the Prime Minister nor the opposition leader will admit that, in Australia it's crazy talk. So here we are, one of the richest countries in the world, one of the largest fossil fuel exporters in the world, exporting record amounts of gas and coal, feeling poor, right? When the price of oil goes up, the Saudis feel rich. When the price of gas goes up, the Qataris feel rich. And when the price of coal and oil and gas goes up, Australia feels poor.
Yeah.
Like, this is broken. And it's broken because neither the government nor the opposition want to have a fight with the fossil fuel industry. So we're a low tax country. We give enormous amounts of gas away for free. And rather than ask whether our tax system is collecting enough tax to give us the kind of health, the kind of education, the kind of dental care, the kind of public transport that people in Germany and France and Norway and Sweden take for granted, in Australia we have to run around going, where would the money come from? Oh no, I suppose we'll have to cut spending on health if we want to pay teachers more. Said no rich country ever.
Yeah.
But here in Australia, centrism says you can't talk about the fact we're a low tax country. You can't talk about taxing the fossil fuel industry. You can't even talk about taking the fossil fuel subsidies away from the fossil fuel industry. So given that we won't be collecting more tax, given the government won't be spending more money, let's have a big debate about little things. And that's leaving the public cold. And it's also meaning Australia's being left behind while other countries make better decisions.
And I guess it kind of reveals what you talk about in the essay as one of the key problems with centrism is there's no kind of motivating ideology behind it. It's more or less defined by
avoiding conflict.
Exactly.
Exactly. And of course, the whole point of democracy is not to make conflict go away, but to create a safe space to have it in. And, you know, I'm a Democrat. I like democracy. And I'm happy to make a case for why we shouldn't give half of our gas exports away for free. And if you want to make a case for why we should, and more people vote for you because they like being generous to foreign gas companies, that will frustrate me, but I will go along with it. The problem with centrism is we're not even allowed to have that conversation because we've given veto powers to the two major parties. We've given veto powers to big corporations. Indeed, we've given veto powers to a lot of our traditional media. And if none of those people want to talk about giving gas away for free, if none of those people want to talk about the fact that, you know, children live in poverty in Australia, even though we just had big tax cuts for high-income blokes, there's there's a small number of people with too much veto power over what we're allowed to talk about. And centrism, I would argue, is the excuse for not having those difficult but important conversations.
And a way to say, if anyone wants to colour outside those lines, you're an extremist.
Oh, you're an extremist, or you're crazy, or you don't understand, or the ultimate accusation, that's not very pragmatic.
Thanks so much, Richard.
Thanks, Eb.
You can order Dead Centre, How Political Pragmatism is Killing Us by Richard Dennis now at theaustralianinstitute.org.au/store. It's $19.95, or you can become an annual subscriber and save $15. This episode was recorded on Tuesday, the 5th of August, and some things may have changed since recording. Our theme music is by Jonathan McFeet from Pulse and Thrum, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Ebony Bennett. Thanks for listening.